Welcome to the somewhat delayed meeting of October for the MTA Bridges and Tunnels Committee, sometimes known as Triborough Bridge and Tunnels Authority. Do we have any public speakers? Do we have any changes to the work plan?
No, we do not.
Does anybody have any additions or corrections to the minutes of our last wonderful meeting? I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes. All in favor? It's now my pleasure to introduce our hardworking, dynamic, and innovative president,
Thank you, Mark. And we'll go right to the report on operations.
Okay, thank you, Jim. The report on operations begins on page 17. In August, we had 26.2 million crossings, which was an increase of 400,000 over the prior year. If you're looking at factors that affect travel, both gas prices and the weather were comparable year to year. Customer trends, cash-paying customers declined by 7% versus August of 2009. Easy Pass grew by 4.7%. Trucks were up 2.3%, and vehicles were up 1.3%. At our crossings, the major Bronx crossings were slightly down by 0.5%. The major Manhattan crossings were up 5.6%. The VN was up 0.3%. The Henry Hudson was up 4.1%, and the Rockaway facilities were down 2.5%, which reflect the first month of the change in the Cross Bay rebate program, the first full month that went into effect in July, towards the end of July. So August was the first month that we saw the impact of that program. Finally, September's preliminary results estimate traffic at 24.6 million crossings, which is very much no change versus the prior year, less than 100,000 vehicles. That's my report.
Do we have the power ourselves to toll the rest of the bridges into Manhattan or to impose congestion pricing, or does somebody else have to do that with us? That's not as I would draw that.
That's actually an interesting question, because when former Chairman Hemmerdinger and several of us went up to Albany, and one of the people we met with was Speaker Silver, he said the city has the right to do that on its own. They don't need the state.
Really?
But that is not the Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority.
Right.
Right.
We can. The collective we can. There may be others who can, but not the collective.
Yeah.
All right, that's the last time I'm asking a silly question. Well, maybe.
All right, we'll move.
Not silly. We equalize traffic. Safety.
Carry on, Jim.
Okay, we'll move on to the Easy Pass performance report.
Okay, thanks, Jim. The August Easy Pass report begins on page 29. It's a continuing good news story. Our market share continues to be up significantly from the year before. The weekly market share was at 75% in August. On weekdays only, it was about 77%, and on weekends, it was about 70%, all about 2.5% higher than the previous year. More than 18,000 Easy Pass accounts were opened during the month, bringing the year-to-date total to more than 105,000, which is 22,000 more than last year at the same time. More than 4,000 of those accounts were Easy Pass on-the-go tags, about 22% of the total. If there's no more questions on the Easy Pass report, or no questions, I'll move on to the financial report, which begins on page 35. And I'm comparing everything against the mid-year forecast as we started doing last month, as opposed to the adopted budget from February. Toll revenue for the month was up about $1.4 million against that mid-year forecast, primarily due to the slightly higher traffic that Dave alluded to. Total expenses were almost $5 million lower than the mid-year, primarily due to timing in maintenance and other operating expenses, along with materials and supplies. Year-to-date against the mid-year, our expenses are about $12.3 million lower, 4.5%. That means about 4.5%, and that's primarily due to lower overtime spending, which is 8.7% lower against the mid-year budget. Also lower spending due to timing for maintenance and other operating expenses. Our support to mass transit through August, $578 million, which is almost $32 million or 6% better than planned. And that concludes the financial report. On the agenda, it mentions the 2011 preliminary budget, which we presented to you last month. So if there's any questions from last month, we can answer that also.
Not bad. Revenue up, expenses down, contribution to the rest of the MTA is up. Maybe we should abolish the Finance Committee and merge it into this one. Oh, I said I wasn't going to do that.
How come this is the only group that makes money?
Right.
We try, man. We'll move on to the capital program. Joaquin?
Yes, good afternoon. The capital report can be found on page 45 of your booklet. For the month of September, there were 11 commitments made for a total of $7.7 million in commitments, bringing year-to-date commitments to $67.5 million against a planned amount of $78.3 million. The most significant commitment that was made in September was a $2.5 million commitment for a toll plaza project at Verrazano Narrows under Project VN 03C. This is a continuation of our program to reconfigure the VN eastbound toll plaza. There were no project completions made in September. Year-to-date completions are running ahead of schedule. Year-to-date completion amount of $220 million achieved versus a planned year-to-date amount of $164 million. And we're well on track to achieve 100% of our overall 2010 completion goal of $256 million in completions. Regarding commitments remaining, as of September 30th, there are 33 out of 77 planned commitments still to be awarded. So consequently, there are several awards that must be made in the final quarter, particularly in November and December. Nonetheless, we remain optimistic about meeting most of these remaining commitments. And finally, there are no closeouts in September year-to-date. We've closed out 29 tasks valued $159.5 million. Unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
Well done.
Questions? No questions? And we'll move on to procurements.
All of us on the committee thank all of you. You're a terrific team. You've reduced expenditures. Revenue is increasing. You've reduced overtime. You've streamlined the agency, and you're doing a terrific job. But all of us, while we kid around, we're very proud of you.
And on behalf of the group, we thank you.
I actually, on the subject,
You want to dissent?
well, not dissent, but the question's been raised to me is that it seems that we have law enforcement officials collecting tolls and riding on the tow trucks. And is that a standard practice, or is that?
If you're referring to the
Anecdotal.
bridge and tunnel officers, that has routinely been part of their job for many, many years.
Okay, and is that a necessary part of their job? I know we want to move away from having people going to cashless tolls and machines and looking to cut down our expenses. But I was just wondering if law enforcement personnel shouldn't be performing law enforcement duties and having people who might be less expensive performing those kind of operations.
Basically, that type of bargaining would be passed on to our labor people. It's part of impact bargaining. So discussions could go forward with that type of thinking, but as of now, past practice and contracts limit us in terms of moving those people out of existing jobs.
It is something that requires us to think about. It's a good topic, though.
It's an expensive way to collect tolls.
Understood.
Procurements?
Good afternoon. There are 3 procurements this month totaling about $7.376 million. There are no non-competitive procurements. There are 2 competitive procurements, the first of which is a modification to a personal service contract with ACS State and Local Solutions for additional work to incorporate the all-electronic tolling pilot at the Henry Hudson Bridge in an amount of $6,127,026. Second is a modification to a personal service contract with Ammon & Whitney Consulting Engineers, P.C., to incorporate construction management and inspection services for Project CB09, described as substructure and underwater work at the Cross Bay Veterans Memorial Bridge in the amount of $954,926. And there is one ratification. It is a modification to a public work contract with E.E. Cruise & Company, Inc. in the amount of $294,400 for additional work under contract TN50, which is replacement of concrete deck and rehabilitation of abutment and retaining walls at the Throgs Neck Bridge. Are there any questions?
Just one question. On the all-electronic tolling procurement, has the scope of work changed substantially since the initial procurement? This is additional, it says on here, or supplementary, right?
Yes.
So you're now asking ACS to do something completely different? Is that why it's $6 million more? Or?
Yeah, well, in conjunction with the all-electronic tolling phase, there is a change to the scope of work. Maybe Don would like to elaborate a little further on that?
This is the ACS piece of all electronic tolling. So we're amending our existing contract with ACS.
So
they
that
can,
piece did not exist before?
That's correct.
There was no,
So it's
there
a
was
change in
no-
scope.
That's
Because
correct.
there was no all-electronic tolling before. Now we're asking
Right,
them to do
right.
something they didn't do before because we didn't have it.
That's correct.
They may have done it, or other places have done it for other places that had it, but we didn't have it. So now we're going to get to it.
That's right.
Okay.
I did drive this weekend back from the Deep South. My daughter is a sophomore at Duke, and not once did anything go like that on the road, including the New Jersey Turnpike, until you got to the greater New York metropolitan area. So, so we're just catching up with the rest of the world here.
I'd like to report two additional items for your information.
Do we have to vote? We should vote on that first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did somebody move over?
I moved them.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now you may.
Thank you. Bridges and Tunnels is included in a MTA sole source multi-agency contract for maintenance of hardware and software that is proprietary to ActiveView Corporation, in addition to as-needed technical support by ActiveView for a period of 5 years. Bridges and Tunnels not to exceed amount is $177,800. Also, New York City Transit is requesting approval for a 1-year extension of 2 of its non-competitive miscellaneous service contracts with Hewlett-Packard Company and Bridges and Tunnels, Metro-North Railroads, and Long Island Railroads contracts with HP for additional hardware and software support. The agency's contracts will be extended through December 31st, 2011, and Bridges and Tunnels amount to $65,118. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Yeah.
That ends our report.
Anyone have any questions? Shall we entertain a
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. Oh, you know, some people suggested that we move this meeting earlier. Does that upset people that if we move a little bit earlier in the day,
Oh, put it in the morning, yeah.
in the morning?
I think they want to try to get it before finance.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
That what we should try?